All Passat B8 power units comply with Euro 6B standards, and from 2017 and 2018, Euro 6C and 6D standards. Let's talk about gasoline engines. From the very start of sales, that is, from September 2014, the Passat B8 was available with 1.4 TSI engines. The 1.8 TSI and 2.0 C engines appeared in February 2015. In the summer of the same year, orders for the hybrid Passat GTE began to be accepted. By the way, the assembly line life of the hybrid was short-lived. It was taken out of production in May 2018. In the same year, in June to August, all gasoline engines disappeared from the engine range. In October 2018, this void was filled by a new 1.5 TSI engine, and in December it was joined by a new 2.0 TSI with 272 horsepower. These engines are equipped with particulate filters. This is what the abbreviation OPF, which is often attached to their name, refers to. 1.4 TSI 125 horsepower, CZCA, 1.4 TSI 150 horsepower without ACT CZDA, 1.4 TSI 150 horsepower with ACT CZEA. The 1.4 TSI engine belongs to the EA211 family and comes in two power options. The 150 horsepower version has an option with a cylinder deactivation system, ACT. This engine has the letter code ZEA. This engine is completely problem-free. Badge engineers have worked on it. The timing drive uses a toothed belt 04E109-119F, which is easier and cheaper to change than a chain. It needs to be changed every 120,000 kilometers. The 1.4 TSI engine does not consume oil, for which we usually thank the set tight piston rings. Although if you change it every 15,000 kilometers, then by the time of replacement you can see a decrease in the oil level in the pan on the dipstick. When driving over 200,000 kilometers, be prepared to change the pump with the thermostat housing, 04E121-600 CV. This entire structure is driven by a separate toothed belt from the pulley on the rear of the exhaust camshaft. The original pump costs $250. Most likely there won't be any problems with it for a long time, but the plastic housing of the thermostats can give an annoying leak. Reputable manufacturers do not sell this case separately. Therefore, for any problems with antifreeze leaks or thermostats, focus on replacing this entire unit. Also with 1.4 TSI engines, fogging is observed on the side of the cylinder block facing the radiators. There, above the oil filter, there is an oil separator housing bolted to the cylinder block. It will have to be removed and glued to new sealant. 1.4 TSI, 156 horsepower. GTE Hybrid 218 horsepower, CUKC. If you are suddenly interested in the hybrid Passat GTE, then under the hood you will find the same problem-free 1.4 TSI. Under the rear seat, this version has a 9.9 kilowatt-hours lithium-ion battery, and the transmission used is a special 6-speed DSG 0DD with a traction electric motor built into it, and it all works well. 1.5 TSI 150 horsepower, DACA, DADA, DPCA. The 1.5 TSI engine belongs to the EA211 Evo family. It is based on the same 1.4 TSI engine, and so far there are no problems with them. By the way, it has the same timing belt. 1.8 TSI 180 horsepower, CJS.A, CJS.A, 2.0 TSI 190 horsepower, CZPB, DKZA, DNNA, DRFA, DUNA, 2.0 TSI 220 horsepower, CHHB, CXDA, 2.0 TSI 272 horsepower, DNUA, 2.0 TSI 280 horsepower, CJXA, DNFE. The older inline turbo 4s with a displacement of 1.8 and 2.0 liters belong to the third generation EA888 family and, since 2019, the 2.0 TSI engine is the 3B generation. The timing drive of all these engines uses a toothed chain, 06K109-158AD, which requires replacement at 150,000 kilometers or even earlier. The condition of the chain is monitored through an inspection window. It shows the tensioner rod and the locking grooves on it. If the rod protrudes by 4 grooves, then you should make an appointment to replace the chain. These engines have never had problems with oil consumption. Even the inlet valves become clogged with plaque, because the fuel injection here is combined, not only into the combustion chambers, but also in front of the valves. Yes, there are 8 injectors in total, but the valves are washable. 2-liter engines with a power of 190 horsepower work according to the Miller's cycle. They also have a valve lift adjustment system either on the intake side or on the exhaust side of the camshaft, depending on the engine power. In general, these engines are more expensive to maintain. For example, a pump 06L121-111M, which is also driven by a belt, will cost $450. Quite often these engines leak on the valve cover. In this case, start by replacing the crankcase ventilation valve 06K103-495BM, which is simply screwed onto the valve cover. As you probably already understood, the Passat B8 is about diesel engines. He essentially has two of them. A basic 1.6 TDI with 120 horsepower. At first it was not equipped with a urea injection system and was produced in this version until June 2016. In parallel with it, a version with the designation SCR Blue Motion has been on sale since May 2015. This one needs to be filled with AdBlue fluid. Since 2019, all of them are equipped with urea injection. The 2-liter turbodiesel does not have urea injection, only in the 150 horsepower version. Options for 190 horsepower and a 240 horsepower Biturbo diesel are always equipped with this system for AdBlue. The latest update to the 1.6 TDI and 2.0 TDI Biturbo engines took place in March 2019. From that moment on, the Passat sedan disappeared from the model range in Europe. Only the station wagon and its all-terrain version Alltrack remained. 1.6 TDI 120 horsepower, DCXA, DCZA, 2.0 TDI 150 horsepower, CRLB, DBGA, DFGA, DSRA, DSRB, DTSA, DTSB. 2.0 TDI 190 horsepower DFCA, DFHA. 2.0 TDI Biturbo 240 horsepower, CUAA. All these engines belong to the EA288 family. The 1.6 and 2.0 diesel engines have a common base. The cylinder block is cast iron. The 1.6-liter TDI is simpler, it does not have balancer shafts, and there is no phase shifter in the cylinder head. The 2-liter TDI has all this. By the way, the phase shifter for diesel 2.0 TDI is not located in the timing belt pulley, but on the opposite side on one of the camshafts. The fuel system is, naturally, common rail, Bosch CP4 pump and electromagnetic injectors. These motors have a complex environmental system. There are two EGR circuits, complex exhaust gas after treatment module with a bunch of sensors, a pressure sensor in one of the glow plugs, and the intercooler is built into the intake manifold and is liquid cooled. On our channel we have a disassembly of the 1.6 TDI engine, EA288 series. You can see how it all works and much more. During the warranty period, there were cases of coolant leaking into the intake through cracks in the intercooler. Otherwise, the 1.6 and 2.0 TDI engines, which are so complex from an environmental point of view, are surprisingly reliable. There are already many examples where they ran 500,000 kilometers with absolutely no problems. By the way, the original timing belt can be changed every 200,000 kilometers, as prescribed by the regulations. There are no cases of its interruption. Ecology systems, that is, EGR and particulate filter with neutralizer, can be turned off programmatically and then partially removed. The fuel system, naturally, will not be happy with low-quality fuel. If you don't refuel just where, then the injectors will cover more than 300,000 kilometers without the need for repair. Separately, we note that the Bosch CP4 pump may not survive a one-time trip on reserve fuel. If it sips air from the tank, it will begin to chip away chips, which will cause damage to both the injectors and regulators. You'll have to change everything and even clean the tank. At high mileage, Passat B8 diesel engines slowly leak oil over the valve cover. Sometimes the lid bursts along its upper and lower halves. In this case, the VKV valve membrane is also usually to blame. But it's built into the valve cover, 03L103469K, which costs $380. There are substitute analogs for this cover and, of course, the membranes themselves. 6th Street MQ200/0AJ, 6th Street MQ250/02S, 6th Street MQ350/02Q. Only 6-speed was installed on the Passat B8. Manual transmission, and there are no problems with any of them. Probably someone is now asking the question, what about a dual mass flywheel? We'll tell you about it soon, but now let's move on to automatic transmissions. The Passat B8 does not have a single traditional automatic transmission. All 2-pedal versions are equipped only with proprietary DSG pre-selective transmissions. All these transmissions are different. There are already 4 varieties of them. 7th Street DSG DQ200 0AM/0CW. The only dry DSG that actually features a double clutch is called the DQ200. It was installed with 1.4 TSI, 1.8 TSI and 1.6 TDI engines. This transmission has been thoroughly finished, improved and brought to mind. In fact, it works great. Its double clutch package is a consumable. Its service life depends on operating conditions. The more shifts, the shorter the service life of the friction linings. The double disc clutch package 0AM 198 142 AC 0AM 198 140K for the DQ200 costs $600-$700. The degree of clutch wear is perfectly diagnosed by software. This transmission needs an oil change. A separate oil, G00400M2, in the amount of 1 liter is filled into the mechatronics, and about 1.7 liters of another type of oil, G055512A2, is filled into the gear part. There is a filter in the mechatronics, but in this case you need to remove the cover above the mechatronics. In practice, it is enough to simply change these few liters of oil every 60,000 kilometers. 6th Street DSG DQ250 02E/0D9. The 2-liter TSI and TDI diesel engines on the Passat B8 were equipped with wet DSG. First it was a 6-speed DQ250. This DSG was successful from the very beginning and it works for a long time perfectly. When we talk about wet clutches, they actually look like a single friction clutch, like the one used in automatic clutches or the Haldex clutch. We have a disassembly of an early DQ250 on our channel. You can see all this in this review. Both mechatronics and clutches are immersed in a total volume of special oil, G052-182A2, at $40 per liter. It drains through the drain plug with the control tube. About 5 liters are drained. At service station they pump it through the drain plug, but you can fill it through the hole under the oil filter. But it takes a long time to fill it this way. The filter itself, O2E305051C, is installed vertically, directly under the battery. The exact oil level in it is controlled through a built-in sensor by a diagnostic scanner. The oil, filter and related gaskets should be changed every 60,000 kilometers. 7th Street DSG DQ381 0GC. Since 2018, a new 7-speed engine has been added to 2-liter engines. DSG, designated DQ381. This is a very reliable transmission. Recommendations for extending its service life are the same. Change the oil, G055529A2, in a volume of about 5 liters in the filter, 0GC325183A, every 60,000 kilometers. 7th Street DSG DQ500 0DL with 2.0 TDI Biturbo. The 2.0 TDI Biturbo diesel engine is equipped with the most powerful transverse DSG of all, the 7-speed DQ500. It is serviced in the same way as the DQ250. Oil of the same grade, G052182A2, but 1 liter more. It has its own filter element 0BH325183B and costs even less $30. In general, the DSG transmissions on the Passat B8 are really reliable and problem-free with normal maintenance and adequate operation. Yes, they often change gears jerkily, but they serve well even when paired with chipped engines. The cooling system of 2-liter engines uses G13 antifreeze. This environmentally friendly liquid requires the presence of a bag of silicate in the expansion tank, which, dissolving in this antifreeze, prevents corrosion of the metal in contact with this antifreeze. Corrosion primarily affects only aluminum parts. If the tank has an insert with silicate, and the cooling system is designed for G13, then the expansion tank will have the following inscription: Mit Silikat, G13. There are rare cases when a silicate bag bursts and its entire contents cause the pump to jam or clog narrow channels in the cooling system. This topic excites both owners and manufacturers. Therefore, badge engineers proposed a reinforced expansion tank with double walls, 5Q01214007G. Since 2019 they abandoned this solution and released an expansion tank without a silicate container, 5Q01214007M. You can install any of these tanks to replace the original one, which can release all the silicate into the cooling system, but if you abandon the silicate additive in antifreeze, this same antifreeze needs to be changed every 3 years or even a little more often. To increase its service life and prevent the formation of corrosion products, you can throw 1 to 2 silicate containers, 4E121176, which were also proposed by the badge concern, into the tank. Literally all versions of the Passat B8 are equipped with dual mass flywheels. The single mass flywheel is found only with the 125 horsepower 1.4 TSI engine, according to the spare parts catalog. What do we know about the dual mass flywheel? This is an expensive consumable. The original costs more than $1,200, but no one buys it because you can always buy a dual mass flywheel from a conveyor supplier, look or sex. Flywheels for 1.4, 1.6 to 1.8 liter engines in this version cost from $450 to $600, and for 2 liter engines the cost reaches $1,400. Dual mass flywheels last differently, averaging 200,000 kilometers or more on highway runs. It has been noticed that when paired with all-wheel drive, the service life of dual mass flywheels is more modest. A worn flywheel can literally be heard from the squeaks and grinding noises you hear under the hood when idling. Engines with power from 150 horsepower on the Passat B8 were available with all-wheel drive based on the 5th generation Haldex clutch. There is no filter in it anymore, but the oil must be changed every 60,000 kilometers. Clots form in the oil from the friction clutches, which easily clog the steel filter meshes on the electric pump. By the 100,000 kilometers mileage, the engine may simply burn out. When changing the oil, G065175A2, which costs up to $70, you need to remove and thoroughly clean the intake of the electric pump. With high mileage, the Passat B8 can expect fogging at the junction with the engine and transmission, which may be due to both the crankshaft oil seal and the transmission. The covers on the DSG may fog up. In addition, the engine and automatic transmission mounts get tired, but this happens on any car. The Passat B8 steering rack is, of course, electric. Often, before a mileage of 100,000 kilometers, a slight dull knock appeared, which occurred when the steering wheel swayed left and right or when driving over potholes. As it turned out, there is nothing serious about this. To get rid of the knocking, you need to tighten the so-called adjusting nut on the rack itself, under which there is a pressure spring and a cracker. They just press the rack in the radial direction. To get to the nut, sometimes you need to lower the subframe. To adjust, you usually don't just tighten the nut, but unscrew it, take out the spring and the cracker in order to fill the rack body with grease. 8323-8849-305. For this mechanism through the hole. Then you can assemble everything in reverse order. Sometimes loose brake calipers of the front wheels are to blame for the appearance of an incomprehensible rumble while driving over potholes. Backlash in calipers occurs due to wear on the guides. In this case, only the caliper guide pins need to be changed. The ball joint is removed and replaced separately. 1K04073666C, 3C04073665B, costs about $60. Dozens of non-original manufacturers offer their analogs at prices starting from $8. Both front arm silent blocks are also detailed separately. The front one in the form of a bushing, 5Q0407-182, and the rear one in the form of a tablet, 5Q0407 plus 183 liter, cost $20 and $32, respectively. As usual in McPherson, the rear silent blocks are the first to fail. On the Passat B8 they run for 200,000 kilometers, and when they are worn out they begin to creak. By the way, they can be replaced with solid rubber ones, 81A407183, from Charged Golf and Audi. These cost $40. Front wheel bearings, 5K0498-621, come with a hubs. The original cost $230. There are good replacements for $80. The front stabilizer bushings are not detailed separately, and its rods, 5Q0411-315A, are sold for $30. Prices for substitutes start at $6. At the rear, front and all-wheel drive Passat B8s have 4 levers on each wheel. Many lever bushings are detailed and sold separately. The front trailing arm silent block, 5Q0500-5541A, costs only $10. Silent block at the bottom of the axle, 5Q0500-5553, $30. Upper wishbone, 5Q0500-5323D, $125. Lower link, 5Q0500-1529F, $45. This is all the cost of original parts. Substitutes are much cheaper. Unlike its predecessors, the Passat B8 looks very different depending on the version and level of equipment. In the basic version, this car has halogen headlights, without lenses, just with reflectors. There are 2 other headlight options, both of which feature LEDs. Basic LED headlights are also equipped with reflectors. But top-end LED headlights are equipped with lenses behind which there are several LEDs. Such headlights are adaptive and can cut out other cars from the high beam zone so as not to blind them. The B8's taillights come in 2 types, but both are fully LED. If the turn signal is located along the bottom edge, these are base headlights. If in the middle, these are high lights. Nothing happens with this LED equipment. The LEDs do not go out, and work for a long time without any maintenance. Yes, sometimes they fog up a little and without any consequences. And frequent highway runs leave chips on their polycarbonate glasses, which are removed by polishing. There are no complaints about the quality of the factory paint of the Passat in the 8th generation. The paint is already or is not yet peeling off or falling off. Chips of paint practically do not bloom, but door seals often rub off the paint in doorways, precisely at the points of their contact with the paintwork. Passat B8 station wagons are often found with panoramic roofs. Slider, i.e. the sliding section mechanism, needs to be lubricated once a year. At the same time, it is worth removing all debris from the gutters located around the perimeter of the roof. These gutters at the four corners are connected to drainage pipes, which descend through the outer roof pillars to the wheel arches. Depending on the conditions, debris and leaves, these tubes can become clogged, then water from the gutters will wet the ceiling and enter the cabin. By the way, the ends of the drainage tubes are covered with simple valves, due to which the tubes can become clogged quickly and suddenly. So either clean these valves or, as is sometimes done, trim them.